Hi, everyone. This week, I'm joined by my friend Tiffany.
Hi.
Joseph's out of town, so she's going to join us to do an episode on Disney adults. And I envisioned this as being a good episode to do on a week when Joseph was gone, in part because I saw that you wore like a Disney adult Halloween costume last year.
I did, yes.
But I had no idea that you're actually kind of low-key a Disney adult.
So I get accused of being a Disney adult a lot, and I try to distance myself from that label because I don't think I'm the type of person people envision when they say Disney adult, but I do have more in common with them than I'd like to think.
Yeah. You are wearing a Mickey Mouse shirt,
I
though.
am. I wanted to dress the part.
And do you have any, do you want to plug your writing or anything before we get started?
Nothing really current, but follow me on Instagram. It's
Cool.
Tiffany, Tiffaynay.
I'll link that in the show notes.
Awesome.
So, to start out, why discuss Disney adults?
They're really fascinating as a subculture. I think people love to hate them. They're very easy to hate just because 'cause they're so unself-aware in many cases and very earnest and very cringe.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss them today in part because I think they're one of the newer, sort of quote unquote cultural figures to sort of discuss, sort of distinct from a subculture in that they're so shaped by external forces of what the Disney Corporation is doing, but also because they kind of fit into Silent Generation's overall thesis, which I don't think you really followed, but
I've
we're,
listened to a few episodes.
yeah, a couple, but we're kind of tracking, what's been lost since the Silent Generation. And there's this idea in anthropology that basically all cultures are equally complex. So American culture today is as equally complex as it was during the Silent Generation. You can critique it on other grounds that it has less meaningful art, but I think you need to come to terms with it still being complex. And one of the things that supplanted all of the Silent Generation institutions and practices is like Disney adult culture. So instead of going to world fairs, people now go to Disney theme parks. Instead of wearing three-piece suits, they wear Avengers t-shirts. You kind of need to understand Disney adult culture in order to then work backwards.
Yeah, totally. I would say Disney adults are kind of like the anti-Silent Generation, what does Joseph call the way he dresses?
Trad Ivy style.
Trad Ivy style, that is, the antithesis of Disney adults.
And then also, it's a good week to talk about Disney adults in part because on August 5th, a New York Times bestseller that's now number 4 came out. It's Disney Adults Exploring and Falling in Love with a Magical Subculture by A.J. Wolf. I listened to the whole audiobook this week. I think you checked it out too, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And that book, it's resulted in Disney Adults reaching peak search volume on Google Trends. So it's kind of buzzing right now.
Yeah, so AJ Wolf is known for Disney Food Blog, which shares an umbrella with a few other related brands. And she does a lot of posts about seasonal food releases, and Epcot has different festivals. So there's a food and wine festival and a flower and garden festival, and there's always different food releases and people get really excited about those, so she posts best of lists and stuff like that. But she herself has been involved in, I guess, the Disney fandom world since pre-Reddit, since very old school message boards. So she knows a lot about it, about the ins and outs, and she explores some of the criticisms of Disney adults, but basically her thesis is let them live, they're having fun, and this is just another way for people to sort of connect.
Yeah, it is sort of like an inside perspective. It is somewhat critical of Disney adults, mostly from the consumption angle, because she herself crossed this line at one point in her life where she went $17,000 into debt just to go on Disney vacations.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did plan out and finance an entire week in Disney World only a few years ago, and that is the most Disney adult thing I've done. It really doesn't go past that. I'm not someone who visits every year or anything. I really just wanted to go once in adulthood, and then I probably won't go back until I have kids, if I do have them. But I did spend a few $1,000s on, being totally in the Disney bubble for the week. I was on premises. I was staying in a hotel that was all themed. Disney to the max. It was the Port Orleans Resort, so it's like a New Orleans style Mardi Gras themed hotel, and then you, like, take the bus or the monorail into the park every day, and you are there from basically rope drop to sundown, and yeah, I don't know, I had really gotten interested, I think, especially around, like, COVID times when I had nothing better to do and was, like, reading these blogs, kind of like the one I mentioned, and I am just such an enjoyer of, like, immersive experiences and themes that it's not so much about Disney as much as just, like, wanting to be in another world for a week. So I think a lot of people enjoy that same aspect of it. But some people, I think, lack the ability to compartmentalize it as a vacation or as a hobby, and it just sort of, fills their every waking moment, which is where it starts to get a little troublesome and pathological.
Yeah. So you read AJ Wolf's blog before reading
Yeah,
the book?
totally. It's very well done.
And that book, it offers a good like description or definition of what Disney adults are. So this is from the description of it. Disney adults are grown-ups who derive singular, almost obsessive joy from all things Disney. They devote countless hours and millions of dollars to Disney offerings, whether or not they have children. And I wanted to give this definition first before giving one from Urban Dictionary, which is actually better, but also more critical. And that is a millennial adult, with or without kids, that can't stop thinking about Disney, including the movies and the parks. Even if they do have kids, they're still way more obsessed with it than their kids would ever be. They probably engage in casual Disney bounding and visit the theme parks at least once a year. But that quality of liking it more than your kids do is something I encountered. Like sometimes Disney adults, when they were critiquing or defending their obsession, they'd be like, oh, my kid actually doesn't like Disney as much as I do. And then people in the comments would be like, yeah, if this wasn't weird, you wouldn't have to point that out.
Yeah, I think some of them actually ruin Disney for their kids. You mentioned Disney bounding, which I feel like we should define for the casual listener.
Yeah.
So, Disney bounding is basically dressing up like Disney character on park premises without crossing the line into, like, costuming, because you're not allowed to actually dress as a character lest a child get confused and, think you're an actual cast member, as they call them.
Yeah.
So people will, like, wear clothes that sort of are inspired by the colors or, like, the patterns of a classic character, and this is, like, a huge hobby and activity for Disney adults, and I see it on social media all the time.
And some of the constraints of Disney bounding, they're actually sort of officiated by the park. Like if you're wearing a dress, it cannot reach the ground.
Mhm.
And if you have a fake weapon, it can't look realistic. And
Right.
so it's very distinct from cosplay. It looks entirely different.
Yeah, because these people, I feel like there's a huge overlap with, like, would-be cosplayers, but they can't, so they're getting as close as they can.
Yeah. And so back to the definition of Disney adult, I think the term that's used in addition to Disney adult, that is the most important part because I think overall, like Disney adult, it's kind of a euphemism for childless millennial.
Yeah.
The childless part is the most important. I don't think we really want to delve into that too much and talk about like pronatalism or
Mhm.
antinatalism on today's episode. But there is definitely that angle there where it's like if you have children, people will not be critical of you going to Disney parks.
Totally.
Would you say that most Disney adults have children? We can talk about the demographics.
Yeah. I think it's, like, half and half roughly. I think the perception is that most of them do not have children, but even the ones that do, there's kind of an angle of, like, I don't know, there's this one influencer I follow that she takes her children to Disney World, but then she's constantly, like, filming them and splicing together shots of them, like, in their Disney bounds, and it doesn't seem like the kids are having that much fun.
Yeah. What's her name? Dear and Darling?
Dear and Darling, yeah, it's actually a husband and wife combo, and the husband is equally into it, I would say.
Equally gay.
He gives very much closeted Mormon vibes. They're from Utah, and oh my god.
Yeah.
You just have to watch the videos to see what I'm talking about, but,
No, he has kind of a big forehead, which is a symptom of gay
just
face.
the way he moves.
Yeah. Clearly excited. But we can talk about them a little bit more later.
Sure.
Other demographics, though, they're majority white, like 88%, right?
Mhm. So 88% are white, according to this one survey they took, and they're more likely to be liberal. 71% were aged between 25 and 44, and 80% were female.
Yeah, and that's from that one article, like, the Disney Adult Industrial Complex. Who wrote that again? It was someone who, like, AJ Wolf talks about a fair amount in the book.
Yeah. Amelia Tate.
Oh, yeah. She's someone else who's, like, pretty big in the Disney adult world, I feel like. But, yeah, they did this, like, demographic survey together, which wasn't super scientific. They were mostly, sourcing all their data from social media, and they got 1,300 results. But another thing, too, is, like, Disney adults are very middle class. Like, the people who are the least likely to go on Disney vacations and want them are the people who make over 150,000 a year.
Mhm.
Disney's key demographic, they're making between 50 and 75,000. And after this week, learning how much it costs to go on a trip to a Disney theme park, like, that's a big reach for people who make that much, I feel like.
Yeah, it's not people with, like, a ton of disposable income, usually it's people who are scraping together throughout the year to, go on this big trip to Disney.
But they get super excited because of that, though. Like,
Mhm.
in some of the infamous examples, like, there's this video we'll put in the show notes of a grown woman who cried upon meeting Goofy. She was actually interviewed in that article about the Disney Industrial Complex, and she explained that her grandfather's favorite Disney character was Goofy, and that was why she became so, like, teary-eyed when she, like, saw him in public or at the theme park.
Yeah, I felt kinda bad for her because she was so maligned, and she had clearly a sentimental, like, familial relationship with this character. But at the same time, you kind of open yourself up to that criticism when you put it on TikTok. People are gonna see that, and they're not gonna, do their research into your background. They're just gonna think, "This is embarrassing. You're an adult. Why are you crying at
Yeah.
Disney World?"
When you went to Disney, was there a character that you were, like, excited to see?
I mean, Mickey Mouse, but I wasn't like, "Oh my god, like, I've been waiting." I wasn't, like, moved.
Yeah,
I like Mickey as this, like, semi-ironic caricature of everything that's wrong with American culture, but he's really cute also.
yeah.
I just like him as an icon, and I appreciate him, and it's become this, like, part of my personality. So, of course, I had to get my picture with Mickey, but no, it was not like a pilgrimage or like a religious experiment experience for me.
What would you say is your favorite Disney film?
The thing is, and this is a major differentiator, I think, between me and who I would call true Disney adults, is I don't care about Disney movies. I definitely watched them as a kid. I loved, Finding Nemo and Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella and all the princesses, really, and like Aristocats. But I've not watched a Disney movie in years. It's not like a comfort thing that I return back to like a lot of Disney adults do. I mostly am interested in the parks as their own like compact experience, and outside of that, my life does not revolve around Disney.
Yeah, I feel like the parks are the best part. For me, my favorite Disney film is Lilo and Stitch because I feel like it was the only good Disney movie to come out in the 2000s when I was, like, at peak childhood. But I feel like nostalgia and that being, like, a big motivating force, like, it's crazy how many times they end up watching Disney movies over and over again. Like, I can't rewatch a film unless it's been at least a decade since I saw it.
Yeah, I can't either. I don't enjoy that.
Like, me, when I was growing up, my sister would watch Aristocats, actually, over and over again, that or Space Jam.
Aristocats is good.
It was the last animated film that Walt Disney had any part in. So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
So there was a Reddit post that went kind of viral where a bride reportedly opted to pay for Mickey and Minnie to appear at her wedding rather than feed her guests. And it seemed like rage bait to me. I mean, that seems outlandish, but it got a lot of attention, and there were several articles written about it, and everyone was like, "This is why Disney adults are out of touch and, like, entitled, and this is why we hate them," essentially. But again, it's a Reddit post, like most "Am I the Asshole" posts are creative fiction,
Yeah.
and AJ Wolf herself said, "The high of moral superiority means that many people online are quick to take skits and satire at face value. People who take this content as genuine are consuming just as uncritically as the Disney adults they mock. Equally, it's hard to deny that the algorithm incentivizes over-the-top reactions and attention-grabbing hyperconsumption."
Yeah. I actually had to check myself a few times this week because content I thought was real was not. Like, there's this video that went pretty viral of someone seeing the Disney castle for the first time upon the park's reopening after COVID, falling to her knees and crying or fake crying. And I thought that was real up until like a couple of hours ago when I was rereading an article and then noticed that that was actually a parody.
Yeah. As I was looking for infamous examples, doing research for this podcast, I couldn't find as many as I expected. I mean, there are lots of just like casual day to day Disney adults being like theater kids or whatever, but there weren't any that really like moral defects, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, overall, they try to put on a show and paint a really rosy picture of themselves. I don't think they wanna show the cracks.
No, but like no one really does on social media.
Yeah. So now I think we can get into sort of the allure of Disney and the psychological motivations behind it. So we touched on nostalgia a little bit. That one is very clear cut. Most people probably can guess that for the majority of Disney adults, at this point, they're multi generational. They become attracted to Disney in part because their grandparents or their parents liked it, and they're coming back to it out of childhood nostalgia.
Yeah, actually, my parents had their honeymoon at Disney World, which is interesting because now they've, like, totally turned their backs to it, and they're like, "It's for kids." I
You're
think going as a child definitely cemented a sense of, like, longing for something pure and more innocent in my adulthood.
Would you say that, like, some of your best childhood memories were at Disney theme parks?
Yeah, I would say so, and actually, I had a pretty tense relationship with my parents growing up, but I don't remember having any incidents in Disney World.
Yeah. From the outside, to me, the amount that, like, nerds go to try to, like, chase childhood highs is kind of sad.
Yeah,
I think about, like, Pokemon quite a bit with, like, shiny hunting. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think shiny Pokemon, they become a little bit less rare, but they used to be like 1 in 6,000 odds. So if you wanted one of them, you'd have to wild encounter that Pokemon 6,000 times, waste like dozens of hours of your life in order to get it. And that's like the Pokemon version, but within Disney, there are like people where it's like, oh yeah, I need to collect every piece of memorabilia from this one movie that I liked when I was 5. And it's the extent they're going is kind of sad because I think you should develop, more complex or new interests as you age.
Yeah, definitely. But at the same time, Disney, like, explicitly markets to and appeals to nostalgia. I last time I went to Disney, went on the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride, and the gimmick of that ride is that there are 6 different, like, '80s classic hits that cycle through, and so each ride, you don't know which song you're gonna
Oh
get,
my god.
and and it's, like, totally bait for millennials and Gen X. And so it's not even, like, Disney bait in that case, but it's just, like, they know how to sink their hooks in and have you, like, longing for a familiar feeling.
I honestly kinda hate that though, because that's like member berries. That's like I don't like Marvel, and I haven't really watched many Marvel films, but I know that their soundtracks are like 80s, like, stadium rock and, like, all of this boomer music that feels a bit dated, like, we should be more into, like, 90s and 2000s nostalgia, but that makes total sense why they're doing it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like the kids don't get that, like, they don't recognize the music, like, they don't get the innuendo or the jokes of, like, a franchise like that. It's totally for the adults, they love it.
Yeah. And then the next sort of motivating factor I wanna talk about is safety. So
Mhm.
Disney adults like the parks because they're very safe. There's very good security. You're not gonna get hit by a car. There's not gonna be a mass shooting. But there's also this certain, like, psychological safety that I think middle-class consumers really like with vacations, where they like to go on cruises to all-inclusive resorts and Disney theme parks because there's a corporate entity that's entirely responsible if they have a bad time. And
Mhm.
they like having this larger entity that will, like, bend to their will if they're unhappy.
It's interesting you mention mass shootings because I read that the Pulse nightclub shooter was actually aiming for Disney Springs, which used to be called Downtown Disney, but it's like the shopping district outside of Walt Disney World. And I guess he was spooked by the police presence. I don't know how true that is, but it's an interesting
Interesting.
consideration.
I mean, I don't know if this was true or not, but I remember after the shooting reading articles that said that, like, he was low-key gay and one like,
I'm
specifically,
sure.
he went to Pulse to shoot up this, like, gay nightclub because he had, like, beef with the gay community, but I don't know if that was true or not.
Maybe he had beef with the gay community and Mickey Mouse. 2 things can be true.
Yeah. The next sort of, like, motivating force is quote unquote "magic." And this is the most abstract. The way that Disney adults use the term magic, it's closer to, say, the words cool or camp, in that it has like so much more additional cultural meaning than can really be articulated. But I feel like the word is too common. Like, it's not ever going to be the case that people start using magic outside of the Disney adult community unless it does reach critical mass like that. But to them, it really, like, the shorthand explanation for it that is summed up in an article, what exactly is the magic of Disney World, is it's essentially full immersion. That's what they're
Mhm.
talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I appreciate about it. They have their own, like, patented shades of, I think, green and blue that actually, like, sink into the background. Psychologically, you're less likely to notice, like, certain areas of the park they don't want you to notice, and there's also something called forced perspective where, like, the castle looks way taller than it is because of this just, like, architectural feat they've created. And then there's this whole tunnel system under the park so that you never see, a cast member where they're not supposed to be,
Yeah.
and, like, I've heard, this is, purported, but if someone dies on park premises, they wheel them down there because they don't want you to see see the corpse,
Yeah.
because that is not in line with Disney Magic, the happiest place on earth.
So what would your, like, definition of magic be?
It's so nebulous, right? But I get what it means. Anything can happen at Disney World, and that sounds really ridiculous and childish, but, like, I have read all these stories of cast members, like, making a child's experience really special and, like, doing something to go above and beyond, and there's just, like, this little bit of pixie dust scattered everywhere that makes it way more personal and fantastical, I guess, than other such theme parks or really anywhere you can go in the world.
Yeah, that's an interesting definition. Outside of Disney, like, magic is a term. There's this Cahill report. It was their fifth and final one. Are you familiar with Cahill?
Yeah, vaguely.
Yeah, they were a trend forecasting group. They coined normcore. But their final report, it was on what was called chaos magic. And they described magic as being the art of making things appear or disappear out of nowhere or into the void in a rabbit in a hat way. And they pointed out that in our earliest days, children and babies, everything is in a state of magic up until they develop pattern recognition. And basically, what Disney adults want is magic. And a lot of our criticisms levied at them are around them sort of performatively being children. And it's interesting that, like, if you think about this definition, that they are trying to sort of like forfeit the rules of reality and be children in that way additionally as well.
Yeah, I feel like had a harder time letting go of magic and, like, magical thinking as a child than maybe my peers,
Yeah.
because I remember being in 4th grade and, like, I still was clinging on to the idea of Santa even though I, like, knew better, and then my teacher implied that Santa was not real, and I was devastated because I was like, "You I knew he wasn't real, but you, like, ruined the illusion for me."
Yeah. You would love WWE.
Really?
Like kayfabe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess Disney does a really good job at suspending disbelief.
Mhm.
So Disney also appeals to escapism/fantasy, which I think is distinct from what we were just talking about, the concept of magic, and that we're talking about fun and play versus outright avoidance, which can be unhealthy. When self-identified Disney adults were asked in a survey what they liked most about the Walt Disney Corporation, by far the most common answer selected by 81% of respondents was, "It offers an escape from an increasingly troubled world." And while that's understandable, it definitely encourages people to seek comfort in entertainment versus, collective action or something that can actually lead to positive change in their real lives.
Yeah. Escapism can be very helpful for people, though, with stressful lives, like, whether it be going home and watching a movie or playing a video game. I don't think that this isn't, like, an area that I feel very critical of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough.
It's maybe just the degree that they go to a literal theme park where for 24 hours they can pretend everything that isn't real is real. And then I think a lot of them too, they sort of become attracted to this because of the community angle, whether it be like online forums or like social media content.
Yeah, there are endless communities based around Disney. When I was preparing for my trip to Disney World, I mostly just went on the Walt Disney World Reddit, which I think, if I remember correctly, there's a Disney World subreddit and there's a Walt Disney World subreddit because the mods are at odds with each other. There was like a schism and it broke off. I don't know. I don't remember why. But I would look at both of those and people would post, like, their trip reports, so they would review, like, "Oh, Slinky Dog Dash was down today," and it, like, was a huge bummer, but, we got fresh Mickey pretzels, so all was well, and blah, 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 and they're weirdly entertaining. Like, I really got excited for my trip reading these.
I feel like Americans as consumers, like they really like discussing their consumption with one another.
Yeah, it's like the same sort of appeal, I think, as guys who sit around and watch walkthroughs or playthroughs of video games, and I'm always like, "Why don't you just play the video game yourself?"
Yeah. And then did you want to talk about the religion part?
Sure. So, there's sort of the idea of fandom as a stand-in for religion and patriotism in an increasingly secular and anti-patriotic culture. It's something to look forward to, believe in, and maybe people know it's not as serious or, I guess, quote unquote, real, but it doesn't really matter because the effect is the same.
A good term for that is ulterior religion. And there have been plenty of scholars who've written about how Disney, for certain people, takes the place of religion in their lives. It definitely can in the way that it does teach people values and it kind of makes them better human beings.
Yeah, it's also a storytelling tradition like any religion.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of examples online of people having like wedding proposals, birthday celebrations, pregnancy announcements, like last visits for a dying child or like grandma. And then people even like mourning their loved ones and spreading ashes in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. So it's taking the place of all of the Catholic sacraments, except I read though that like they don't permit you to put Disney iconography on headstones because they don't want to associate their brand with death.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild to put Disney iconography on a headstone, but also like Disney being so, I guess, anal about their brand. I mean, that's how they keep it
Yeah.
intact.
And then next, I would like to discuss Disney resorts as a whole. So this is something I didn't quite know before this week. So there are 6 Disney resorts, and within them, there are 12 individual theme parks. So each resort, it ranges from I think 1 to 4 theme parks, with Disney World having the most. That one has
4.
4 parks.
Yeah, so Disney World has Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, Epcot, and Hollywood Studios.
Yeah. Did you get to visit all of those when you
I
went?
did, and I actually went to Epcot twice.
Nice.
One day to ride the rides and explore the park, and then the second day to drink around the world, which we'll get into.
Yeah. So Disneyland, that was the first Disney theme park to ever open in 1955, and that's the only one that I've ever been to. I went there as a kid one time with my mom because my mom's side's from California. I actually don't know why I didn't go more often as a kid. I feel like she should have brought me more than just once.
Well, then maybe you'd have ended up a Disney adult.
Maybe I would have, but I bet my mom was actually strongly opinionated. I wouldn't be surprised if she had some like asinine opinion, like, oh yeah, you bring your children to Disneyland once. I bet she did think that. But I'm not a Disney adult. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for Disney and Disney theme parks, but I do kind of a little bit have it for Disneyland because I'm nostalgic for California and when it sort of embodied the American dream in the 50s and 60s. Because I grew up in Chicago. I've never lived anywhere else, so I've never truly been homesick. But my mom and my siblings who were adopted from California, they'd talk about their wonderful lives in California and going to Disney theme parks and things like that. So I do feel nostalgic for it. And you got to go to it too at one point, right?
Yeah, so I have been to Disneyland as well, but my first trip to Disneyland was when I was 16, so it doesn't serve the same or it doesn't embody the same nostalgia for me.
Yeah, you weren't as hyped.
Mhm.
But I feel like it has more, or I don't know if this is the case, but at least for me, I would think on paper that it has the ability to elicit more nostalgia because the rides are on average, I think, older.
Yeah, so Walt himself had a lot more oversight because he actually died during the construction of Walt Disney World, so he never even got to see the finalized product.